Yes. We need that pulpit like Dan had a few summers ago up the front. So sign system advertising, okay? Now I already know that you guys are doing this because I used to do this. You guys will probably just go over that once, and then you try and make some awkward transition into the house. And like, I don't know why they didn't let me in, I don't know why they didn't want to buy it. Now, we've said this 1,001 times, and this will probably click for you, maybe today, maybe next week, but a confused buyer doesn't buy, right? So I'm going to go over repitching today, and probably like, you need to repitch a customer, ideally 4 times throughout your pitch. And you guys are probably rushing through it like once at the start, and then basically knocking laydowns that have already been looking for cameras. But if you can repitch and it makes sense for the customer, then they will give you their credit card information, they will give you their social, and it helps build value with the customer. So what do I mean by repitching? So I've used the board, but it's okay, I'll just explain. Is there another side to it or just one side? Okay. So when you first knock on a door, what's the first kind of advertising you guys would normally mention? The sign, right. And then what does the sign do for ADT? Word of mouth. Okay. So you guys are probably all getting that down pat. You're probably knocking on the door. Like, hey, I'm, Wayne. I'm in charge of the sign here. The signs help generate word of mouth for ADT. I would say like 98, 99, percent of the time you guys are probably alluding to that advertising. You might be stumbling over a bit, but you're mentioning it probably. The next bit of advertising that you would probably mention is when you're actually looking for the hot button, right? And so, what are most people normally interested in?
Cameras.
Cameras, right? So the way I like to repitch advertising, because you'll repitch it and you'll kind of hone in on it as you go through the pitch multiple times, and it will help the customer make a lot of sense. So like, the next time I'm going to mention advertising after the sign is, let's see if we can try this off a little bit, is when I'm talking about the cameras, right? So first time rounds, we're talking about the sign. Oh, these markers are so good. And then it does word of mouth, right? The next time I go through, I want to talk about the equipment, right? So I've already talked about the sign. I'm like, yeah, like we want the neighbors to see it. Ramone's line's pretty cool. Like if it's good enough for you, it's going to be good enough for them. They see ADT, 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 ADT. Who are they going to call if their car gets broken into? ADT, right? So there's a couple lines you can use for that. I'm sure you guys all have one that you like. Just keep using the same one and keep working. They just need to know the signs generate word of mouth. And now, one that I often focus on to help it make sense is that we prefer TV commercials, is that right, the greater sign, instead of, other way around.
No, you're right. No, you're right.
I am right. Boom. And word of mouth. So, oh, that's right. The crocodile eats it.
No,
The only math I know how to do is counting my money in my bank account. I don't know any other math. So, word of mouth beats TV commercials. That's usually like the next kind of piece of advertising I try and mention. And I'll usually ask a question when I'm there. I'm like, yeah, like, do you guys bought anything off the TV? No. Oh, you guys watch Netflix? What's a good show you recommend? Just try and break it up a little bit. And I want them to see TV commercials are expensive, right? Why would I spend money on an ineffective way of advertising? And sometimes, like, if I'm really, they're not understanding it, like, okay, so you're only left with a couple of options, like letterbox shopping, billboards, like, I don't know, like, putting an ad in a newspaper and TV commercials. None of those work. What is the best way of advertising? Word of mouth. And they go, oh, right, that makes sense. So your home generates word of mouth because, comment on the house. You have the big tree out the front. You have the nice car out the front. You've been here the second longest in the neighborhood. Your home helps us with advertising, and it's a good fit for my program. That's why I chose your house, right? And there could be so many reasons as to why that home is good.
He's explaining all that.
Corner house, I do.
All of that.
Like he's got my pitch.
He's not just telling us, like, explaining it to us. This is actually what he says.
Almost word for word, like what I would say to a customer. I might not use all 5 lines in a pitch, but you can bet that for each stage, I'm using one of those lines. So the next bit of advertising I'm mentioning, because my whole pitch is about advertising. Like, hey, what's up? Yeah, I'm Nate. I'm with the advertising team. Anyway, free cameras. And it's like, wait, aren't you with the advertising? How does the advertising work? Like, do I put the sign out and I get a free camera for that? I just buy a sign on Amazon. How is that advertised? People are dumb. I need you to explain it to them. So the next bit is the equipment, right? I love mentioning this thing, okay? Because I'm assuming the sale, and I go, okay, a lot of your neighbors have been and will buy cameras. And I nod. I go, I'm sure you're the same. And I nod. And they go, yes, like Star Wars, bro. Like, these are not the droids you're looking for. Like, these are the cameras you've been looking for. And I nod, right? And like, yes, I agree. I go, okay, so we want them to see that ADT has what they want. Say that with me. We want them to see that ADT has what they want. I use that line almost every time. And I point to the sign, and then I point to where I would put the camera. So I go up to the house, and I'm like, yeah, obviously a lot of neighbors are looking at doing cameras. I'm sure you're the same. Obviously we pay for the cameras, or we cover the upfront cost for the cameras, depending on how I'm pitching it. We cover the upfront cost of the cameras because we want the neighbors to see, point to the doorbell, point to where the camera go over the car. The ADT has what they want. So that when they're retroactive and they buy it later, they see your cameras, they see your sign, and who are they calling for cameras? ADT. Right, you can do my job for me, right? So that's the equipment. Then, when I'm getting into the home, I'm getting the app on their phone, right? The app on their phone. Or I'm showing them the demo on my phone. Whether it's the ADT app or the Google Home app, I'm showing them. And obviously this helps us, Mr. Mike, with advertising too. Because when you're at work, not at home, and you're checking on your house with your brand new cameras that we'll be paying for today, and your neighbors, your friends, your colleagues, you see those super cool cameras on your phone, where are you going to be sending them for cameras in the future?
Right, yeah, probably you guys do.
ADT, absolutely, because you guys are going to love it. You're going to use it heaps. And then sometimes, like if I'm getting a TIO, I'll do a pullback. I'm like, yeah, obviously this program's about advertising, right? So we want to make sure we're giving you equipment that you'll use, that you'll love, and you'll tell your neighbors about. And I'm helping them see, okay, we're investing in your home, so you use it, you love it, and you tell your neighbors about it, right? So there's some really common ones. And then sometimes even when I'm getting to price drop, I will re-explain advertising all over again, right? Because Ron was saying he doesn't understand why people are sketched out when they see zero, right? It's like too good to be true. Who's got that objection before? I did yesterday, right? So I always say when I'm dropping the price, hey, Mr. Mike, obviously ADT is not a charity, right? We've been around 148 years. We do know that investing in homes generates word of mouth. I go back into my iPad and I pull up the Property Brothers and the sign, and I give them a 10-second re-pitch. And I'm re-pitching them. You go, yeah, obviously the reason we're getting all this covered is because we're out here today and are investing in your home to advertise for us instead of TV commercials. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, awesome. Does that price seem fair to you? Yes. Cool. And because you're investing in the home, we get the monthly at $78.99. That's the only thing you'll be paying for. Literally the only thing you'll be paying for, so you don't have to think it over. Oh, that makes sense, totally. And so these are, I do love that one. Yeah, because I hate getting TIO. Like literally the only thing you have to pay, so you don't have to think it over. You're not going to think it over. The only thing you have to pay, you're not thinking it over. Like, okay. So now a lot of you guys are probably doing it here, maybe here. Do you see how like when you go through the pitch and you re-pitch them, like sign, system, advertising, you keep going back. So if you're talking about the sign, then pitch the system. If you're talking about the system, go back to the sign. If you're talking, and it should all point to advertising, so that the customer's like, okay, this is why I'm getting the deal. I'll sometimes joke with them, I'm like, yeah, it's not advertising lawns program, it's advertising homes program. We want to use your home as a billboard for ADT. And they're like, huh? I'm like, yeah, like if you want to put one of those like Vegas big flashing signs on top, like with ADT, I'm just joking. But if you do want to wrap the car, I'm serious, I know a guy, my buddy's got a good car wrapper. I'm just kidding. But obviously the cameras on the home help generate word of mouth for ADT because everyone sees them, and they've all been looking at doing cameras, right? With all the craziness going on, packages getting stolen, catalytic converters getting pinched, people smashing windows looking for guns. Obviously where we're at now, people getting into homes looking for prescription drugs. See how I crime drop by mentioning advertising? I'm I'm like, yeah, that's why people are looking at this stuff. And that's why it makes sense for you guys to advertise for us, because the next 3 or 4 years people are going to buy it, right? So I'm going to give you a couple lines for all of these, and then we'll wrap it up. Does anyone have any questions about repitching?
I mean, I just had a note, like, just Nate, you can learn from him. There's a training in just listening to how he trains. I see all of you guys are engaged with what he's saying because of the tonality that he's using and the emphasis that he puts on all of his words. What's your line with the word of mouth that you say for the TV commercials?
Yeah, I ask them a question usually, like, do you buy it for TV?
Right.
Maybe a George Foreman grill 10 years ago.
I forget what it is that you said, but you have a lot of pauses, and then you emphasize the things that you want them to hear. Because you can say all of these lines, but it can blow right past the customer if you're not focusing. So make it like you're in like a cartoon, because you're going to come back to me and Caleb and Nate and say, oh, I said that. You didn't say it like he said it. That's why it didn't work. Because you said it how he said it is what makes it work. So practice your tonality, be overly animated, and emphasize your words. Make pauses. Hey, so Nate, we're actually going to pay for a brand new system to go inside your house.
And I, like, even just listening to him, I heard system and pay. Those are the 2 words that stuck out to me. So I'll kind of go over them and just show you how I say them, right? Because like, I remember Dan telling the story, I forget the name of the rep, but it was like years ago. And he was so locked in on just learning how to do this freaking job.
Sean Williams.
Oh, it was Sean Williams?
Sold 14 in 2 days.
There you go, Sean Williams, right? The guy who literally sold 8 on Saturday. Like,
a lot
of guys that like kind of have the tism, they don't really know how to like do the job, but they learn it verbatim.
The Aussies.
They'll like copy and mirror people who are socially like adept and just copy it. Because like the sale is more or less the same for majority of people. Like, and you can literally flowchart how to go through probably your 5 most common sales. And so if you can learn this stuff, like okay, Nate, when he like goes up, he shakes a hand, he looks at them for 1 second, then moves away, turns his back. There's literally like, just like how you would kick a football, or throw a football, or shoot a basketball, like there's technique to doing this sort of stuff. I don't have it perfect. I'm still dialing in my stuff, but like you can kind of collectively get everyone who's slinging, like all the guys up the top there, and pick their brains, you know? And so I might do some things better, Mike might do some things better. That's the best bit, is you guys can kind of pool all of our knowledge and then get it. So I'll show you how I do my lines here, if Mike was my customer. And I'll just, just show you how I would say them. Because that's the most important thing. Even if you kind of have a bit of a stuffed up line, like you can just say it properly and like mean it, and people they'll like feel that, Cool. Hey, Mr. Mike, I'm Nate. I'm working with the advertising team out here. I'm actually in charge of these little blue signs here. The blue would match your house real perfect. That's why I chose it. You guys have one of the nicer houses. Match your eyes, actually. You get comments on that all the time?
Yeah, sometimes.
Awesome, cool. So a lot of neighbors out here have been looking at doing security. We just want them to call ADT. So when you help us out with some word of mouth, it means that the neighbors are going to buy with us later on. Does that kind of make sense, Mike?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. Now that line was terrible. Like I watched that whole line up, it was terrible. But like I'm smiling at Mike, I'm like placing the sign down. You don't have to have the sign, you can have it on your iPad. Just show him where it's going to go, move around. Because when I transition next time, because I've been moving around and waving my hand, but yeah, I'll step right here and then I go in. If you're like frozen like this the whole time, like yeah, like you'll see customers do that. I've seen rookies do that before. They're like frozen, and then like, okay, now I need to 3, 2, 1. Hey, can I go here? And then the customer's like, so like move around a bit, like move the sale, like yep, up over here. You're kind of feeling yourself, you got your swagger. So okay, yeah, Mike. Obviously the signs help us out with advertising.
Yep.
When the neighbors see ADT, 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 with everything that's going on, we obviously want a piece of the pie.
Yep.
The reason I chose your house is I saw, I don't even want to say the name, the orange guys over there.
Right,
Did they knock your door kind of recently?
Yeah.
That's kind of why I'm out here. We don't want the neighbors calling them. We want them calling Old Faithful ADT. And so we want to paint the neighborhood blue, so that when the neighbors see these signs, they call us instead of our competitors, we get a piece of the pie. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then I'll go into advertising. Okay, yeah, and obviously it makes sense to advertise with your home instead of TV commercials, Mike. Now, pop quiz, do you know who does ADT's commercials?
No.
I'm going to show you and be like, you seen these guys before?
Yeah, my wife watches them.
Right. So they do have commercials you didn't even know, right? Do you buy anything off the TV, Mike?
Not really, no.
Me neither, right? Maybe like 10 years ago, like a George Foreman grill. Nowadays, what do you watch? Netflix?
Yeah, I got the shake weight one time. But
Oh, the shake weight? Let's go. That's cool.
Yeah.
So if you got a good show that you want to watch on Netflix?
No, that's worth it now.
No,
Me too, right? I'm out here working right now. So instead of spending money out there on stuff that's expensive and ineffective, we'd much rather spend it on your home. It's more affordable for our company and way more effective because neighbors buy what neighbors have. Does that make sense, Mike?
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
Cool. And I'm back in the home. Okay, now with all the neighbors looking at the cameras and buying the cameras out here for one reason or another, crime drop, we obviously want them to see that ADT has what they want.
Yeah.
And so when they see these brand new Google cameras up on your home here, here, and the one that you wanted up over the kid's bedroom over here, then they know that we have what they want. Does that make sense, Mike?
Yeah, that makes
Cool.
sense.
Because this sign, you can buy these on Amazon. We want them to see that we have what they want with the cameras. Now I'll show you how this works real quick. Are you guys are shoes on or shoes off type of house?
You can take your shoes off.
Now you go in, I'm showing them the app. Yeah, this is my favorite part about it. It does a 24/7 recording, which is awesome. Now obviously when you're at work, you pull these up and see if your family's safe and sound. Who are you going to be sending your work colleagues to when they see your super sweet cameras?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
ADT, you can do my job for me, right? You understand how it works.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm getting here, pitch and price. Hey, the reason we get everything for zero, Mike, is instead of spending money here on TV commercials,
Yeah, sure.
we invest into your home. So we take the money that we would have spent there,
Okay.
and then we cover all the upfronts for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's how we get it for zero, right? Does that seem fair to you?
Yeah.
Cool. And literally, the only thing you'll be paying, we ask you not to brag about it, is just the 78 bucks, right? Now we can't do that for all the neighbors, and that's just month to month, rather than paying 120 normally, right? We get it down there, so you don't have to think it over, which is really cool. Now when the alarm goes off, what's the best number to call?
I almost said finger. 559.
That way you don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
They
So,
always ask
That's
that
how I do
question.
it. And like, see how I'm dropping my voice a little bit, like when I'm getting to the end of the sentence? It shows you're really insecure if you speed up at the end of your sentence. So if you can kind of like slow down and drop your voice a little bit. I know it seems kind of dumb. Like, Zach was watching me yesterday, he almost laughed a few times, I think.
Yeah.
When there's like this old, kind of like scraggly guy, he smells a bit funny. I'm like, wait, I'm like, yeah, Mr. Scott. And like, it's like kind of comical. And I'm like, just showing him right here. And he was like hooked, man. Like, he was like zoomed in, like looking at my iPad, loving it. So hopefully you guys kind of see that when it makes sense for the customer, they'll buy, and just keeping them engaged is going to help you guys a lot. It's like smiling, big smiles, voice fluctuation, and then like just going through and kind of saying it right to their face. No ums, just like, yep. Even if you stuff up the line, just mention, like, man, it's been such a long day. My brain's about to fall out my ears. What I meant to say is that advertising is really important for ADT.
Can I get a bottle of water, actually?
Yeah, actually, come on in, Mike. Yeah, come on in. There you go. Cool. Any questions?
Yeah.
Questions?
Do you always say, yeah, does that make sense?
I like to say it a lot
Okay.
because it helps me, like Lamont says, feel the pulse of the sale.
Yeah.
So if they go, oh yeah.
And if they say I'm not interested, then skip
But
over.
you don't want to say, does that make sense, at the wrong part. So, hey, you just paid for 78 bucks. Does that make sense?
Right. No, right.
No, because
right.
then they're going to say, but if I'm explaining like, hey, we actually pay for the cameras so that you advertise. Does that make sense?
Right.
Because I want him to listen to that and hear what I said. Does that make sense? Oh, well, we pay, because what he's going to be rethinking in his head is what I just told him. So, yeah, we pay for everything. Yeah, that makes sense. So I drilled that into his head, the part that I wanted him to remember. I wanted him to remember that we pay for it so that he doesn't say, not interested.
Right.
So we'll actually pay for it as long as you can help us advertise. Does that make sense?
And I'm not making it aggressive. Like, see how Mike did that there? I wasn't aggressive. Like, I'm like, does that make sense, you idiot? It's like, yeah, does that make sense? Like, I'm kind of like just trying to help them see, like, hey, like, am I doing a good job at my job? Like, hey, does that make sense? And they're like, oh, yeah, I get it. Like, and sometimes I'll like elaborate. They're like, yeah, like the commercials don't work. Yeah, word of mouth, I get it. I'm like, yeah, cool. Like, you could do my job. That's why I get paid.
There's certain parts you want to be assumptive about. Hey, my job's to show you so where we put everything inside your house so I can step inside your house. Does that make sense? Okay, it wouldn't work there, right?
Oh yeah,
or like, hey,
ADT, I've never heard of them. Oh yeah,
price
cool,
is
that's
set.
fine. Are you guys are shoes on or shoes off house? It's like, what the heck? Like, so use these lines for sure. But yeah, the right time is really important. Otherwise, you kind of like push yourself.
When you say shoes on, shoes off, you kind of just start walking, or you don't just wait. Huh?
So I'll be honest, the way that I do it is I'll sometimes, if I'm going for a Hail Mary, like house transition, I'll do a shoes on, shoes off. Normally I'm waiting and pitching on the doorstep until they ask me a buying question, and I'm listening. I'm like really attentive, and I'm like kind of like a croc that just has their eyes and their nose waiting above the water.